We're going to be talking about tax tips for photographers today. We're going to be going over things like sales tax, deductions, expenses, accounting, different things like that. I've got Ethan Ryder hanging out with me today. Super excited to have him on here. If you guys caught Wide Angle Wednesday, it was last week, right, Ethan?
Yeah, last week.
Ethan was hanging out with us last week on Wide Angle Wednesday, and such a great guy. On the last minute, I was like, hey, man, can you come and talk about tax? And he was like, yeah, dude, I got you. So super excited to have Ethan here. Ethan, you want to take a few minutes and go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about your photography background?
Yeah, so I've been photographing since my freshman year in high school. I inherited my mom's film camera, an old FM10, and then moved over to digital, and I've been shooting digitally ever since for 10 years now. Family portraits, weddings, corporate work, headshots, babies, and a ton of schools. I've been photographing schools for 5 years now, and it's a big part of our income, and I love it. Just hanging out with the kids keeps me young, and it's fun. I don't consider it work, so I don't know what else I would do.
Well, Ethan, we're going to talk about tax. Before we talk about tax, another quick disclaimer. I am not a tax professional. Ethan, I don't believe, would claim to be a tax professional. So please do not take any of the stuff that we say today as legal tax advice. This is more of a discussion to get your wheels turning and just to talk about tax from Ethan's experience. And then if we have Zenfolio questions related on tax, I can definitely talk to you guys about that and show you how to do it. But again, please do not take this as tax advice. We will always recommend that you consult a local tax authority for tax questions.
Besides restaurants, I've heard that photographers are one of the number one audited companies in the US, just because there's so much leeway on what you can write off and stuff like that, that, you have to make sure that you have proof that, you can't take the whole family to Hawaii because you're going to go photograph a wedding, and then none of your family helps you with that wedding. Now, if you take your wife and she's your assistant, then, hey, guess what? That might be something, talk to your tax guy, but that might be something that, as long as you're working, if you're there to work, you need a place to stay. So no, you're not on vacation, you're working, you're photographing a wedding. You just got to be careful on what you write off.
So when you first started running your business, what was kind of the hardest part tax-wise as far as like getting under wraps and making sure that you were tracking and staying on top of?
I would say number one is get a business banking account. Everything needs to go into one account, whether you have Zelle, PayPal, or Venmo, or, all that stuff has to funnel into your business banking account. That's going to help your tax guy keep track of everything in one area. For example, I'll tell you, I have my business checking, my personal checking, and then a savings, and everything goes into the business checking first. And then from there, I put in, X number into my personal to pay bills and stuff like that and buy food and whatever. And then you put the X number in your savings. Yeah. So funneling into that one and then separating it up is a great idea. From my experience, so I'm still a sole proprietor this year. Next year, I do plan on going LLC. I don't feel like I've quite hit the number mark for an LLC, but my tax guy can say differently. The big difference between your sole proprietorship and your LLCs is obviously always have insurance no matter what, whether you have an LLC or a sole proprietorship. But if something were to happen, say someone were to trip over a light stand, or just one of your clients got hurt for some reason and they sued you, they would sue the LLC and not you personally. So you can't lose your house if you have an LLC if someone were to sue your business. Or if you're a sole proprietor and someone were to sue you, they can take basically whatever they want. They can take cars, everything. So I highly recommend doing the LLC. I've been meaning to do it forever, and this year is definitely the year to change it. Due to having different branches, I would say, of my business, like my school stuff is school kit pics, and then my wedding and family portrait stuff is writer portraits. Those are all going to be under one LLC, like, Writer Studios LLC. And then you have to do your DBAs for, people writing checks and all that good stuff. So Writer Studios LLC, DBA, school kit pics. It gets mouthy for sure. It's a long one, but it's definitely the best way to go.
how do you find somebody who is, maybe a trustworthy accountant, somebody who maybe specializes in photography? What did you look for when you were looking for a tax guy?
So I got pretty lucky, actually. My tax guy happened to be a really good friend of mine through a group of friends. So word of mouth is huge. Ask your other pro photographer buddy. Hey man, who do you use? How long have you used them? I talk taxes with a lot of my photo friends, and they have a lot of people that they share. And there's a few that are very like photographer specific. You can find them out there with a nice little Google search. But word of mouth is the best way. Just like in the photography industry, if someone does a really good job and they know that you're a photographer and you're in the same area, then there's no doubt that they would do a good job for you. So yeah, I definitely recommend word of mouth. Ask your other photographer buddies.
There are a lot of people who do shoots for like nonprofits and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's something that it's always a question I've always seen come up is if I do shoots for nonprofit, what part of that can I write off in my tax?
So yeah, this is actually a really good question because I was confused on this one until I asked my tax guy as well. Most people think that you can send let's say you voluntarily photograph for a golf tournament. You send the head person at the golf tournament your regular invoice. You can't write off that entire invoice. So your labor for the hours of photographing, you can't write off. That's considered voluntary. But what you can write off is the gas it takes to get there, the parking fee that you have to do, the food that you have to buy for the day. Now, most of the time, this stuff is donated to you because you're working there already for free. So sometimes it's hard to write that kind of stuff off, but gas is a huge one. You can write off rental equipment as well if you need to. If you hire somebody to photograph with you as well, $200, $250, $350 to your assistant photographer, you can definitely write that off. Because it's a business expense. He's not volunteering his time. Your business is volunteering its time, and then you're paying him, or her.
And as photographers, and you've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but there are a lot of expenses that we have that we can take off that we might not even think about. I know when you and I were chatting about this, continuing your education is one that you brought up that I had never even thought about. But can you talk about some of the expenses that you've wrote off that maybe a lot of us might not even think about?
You can start with your pens, your pencils, your paper, your paper clips, your rubber bands, right? And then you go your flash drives and your CDs. And I mean, I don't know how many people burn DVDs anymore for their clients. I feel like if they're either sending them one of those really cool little thumb drives, or I send everything digitally these days, unless they want print services. A big thing that people also forget, you can write off anything advertising, any of your subscriptions, like stuff like your website, your business cards, your flyers, anything promotional material. Even if you print a flag that you post outside of your house saying, I'm a photographer, write that $25 off. There's a convention every year in Vegas called SPAC, and it's Sports Photographers of California. It's great. I love it. I have a lot of friends there. You can write off it's education. I'm taking classes for 3 days there, or you're presenting maybe one day, and you get to write off staying in the hotel. You get to write off the classes that you take, the amount, I think it was like $250 or something last year. You get to write that off. You don't get to write off your gambling and your alcohol and, stuff like that, obviously. But anything to do with the educational side of even if you have to travel to a class, you can write off your travel. I write off my travel to that class, anything that has to do with taking that class. Most of the time, like that convention had, food supplied for breakfast and stuff like that. But if you go somewhere else and you have a meeting with another client or maybe a vendor of yours, you can write some of that off too. It's only a percentage. You can't write off the entire meal. You got to check on your state, but your airfare is huge. That's a big one. Flying somewhere to shoot sometimes can be $600, $700, depending on, when you have to fly. And that's a big expense. Now you should charge your client for it, but you got to figure that out.
Really quick, I've heard photographers mention doing quarterly taxes. Is there a bit? Do you do your taxes quarterly? Do you do it annually? Is there a benefit to doing one way versus the other?
Most of our busy time for the schools is August through November. We make about 70% of our year's profit in that time. Um, so if you have the money, I would say put it down. You know, that's in the perfect world, right? Um, if you and say after that busy season, your January, February, March, January is usually pretty slow for me. February, it picks back up. March is definitely preschool, stuff like that. That quarterly is going to help you pay for those 3 months of what I consider a season. So you don't make that much January, February, March, pay that percentage in there. April, May, June, pay that percentage in there. That way, at the end of the year, you might still actually have a little bit of a return in a perfect world. But most of the time in the business owning world, there is absolutely no returns, and you're usually paying out a little bit more. But I would highly recommend the quarterly estimated payouts. I think you can even do monthly estimated payouts too, but I know quarterly for sure you can do.
Any recommendations, software recommendations, anything that you use, maybe that your tax guy recommends for software for you to use to keep up with everything?
Yeah, I mean, QuickBooks is one of the best ones I've heard for everybody. I personally have been doing all my own stuff the past few years, and I've finally forced myself this year to get started on a QuickBooks. But every single person I talk to that runs a business says QuickBooks is just the go-to place.
If you sell to someone out of state, is it now required for all states that you have to collect sales tax? If so, is it for your state or theirs? So I can give the Zenfolio answer to that. If you're using Zenfolio's platform and you have, because you can set up your sales tax in Zenfolio's platform, what you're going to do is you're going to identify the state that you're in, and then you're going to identify how you would like to collect sales tax on the products that you sell. All right. And there's a couple of different ways to do it. The most popular option, the option that I see used most of the time, is by shipping destination. All right, the other options are you can set a custom tax percentage, which means you can go in there and actually enter the percent of tax you would like to collect, or you can enter your zip code. I think there's a couple other options. I just don't remember off the top of my head. But the main option that people use is to collect sales tax based on the shipping destination of the order. And so when you have it set up that way, what that means is that when a client places an order, Zenfolio's system is going to look at your state's tax codes for how to collect or calculate and collect sales tax based on your state's tax laws for where that order is being shipped. So some states I know do require that you collect sales tax for orders going out of state. It again is a state-by-state thing. That is how the Zenfolio system will do it. You would identify that you want to collect sales tax based on the shipping destination, and then our system would charge sales tax based on your state's tax codes for where that order is being shipped to.
From my understanding, you can depreciate any purchase that's over $2,500. So that's considered like a big purchase. Most camera bodies, and on the professional side, are that or above. A few of my professional buddies will depreciate their camera like maybe $100 a year, because they don't devalue like a car would, per se. Especially lenses. Lenses don't really depreciate. They hold their value pretty well throughout the years. But bodies, since they're switching bodies so much, they depreciate a little faster. So talk to your tax guy about what percentage you can depreciate your equipment, because I'm sure it totally varies in each state. But yeah, you can on those large purchases, you can depreciate a little bit.